Well, it feels a little more like spring out there anyway, starting to warm up a bit, and looks like it's going to really warm up later in the week with some rain coming in, which is great. We're heading into the end of February. And I always enjoy February because it's a short month. You think that it's those losing a couple of days might not seem like much, but it matters. Because March comes around, and then the next thing you know, we're at spring training baseball. It's going on right now. Absolutely. So we're getting there, folks. We're getting there. Thanks for tuning in and listening. Hope you had yourself a great weekend. I'd like to thank Vanessa Vandeness on the other side of the glass of the control boards, doing a fine job as always. I'm a little out of breath because I just ran out to the printer really quick, and I ate 2 Timbits on the way, and so therefore it winded me. I know that sounds bad, doesn't it? The reason why I have Timbits is because I have 2 counselors in front of me. One is kind and generous and brought Timbits and coffee, and the other didn't. And skill testing question, Shawn Cleary and Billy Gillis, which one do you think brought the Timbits?
It wasn't me.
Shawn Cleary, it was not you, but you brought your personality and your zeal for the city, so that's
all that bubbliness.
That's right. And he grabbed the window seat from you, Billy, as well.
I know. He stole my seat.
Well, seniority has some privileges, right?
That's definitely, yes, 100%.
So we know where we stand. You didn't get the window seat, and you brought the treats.
Yes, that's right. By process of elimination, it was me.
That's right. Anyway, welcome to the show, everybody. We appreciate it. It is a Monday. We have our counselors on the hot seat. And we'll do our best to heat up the seat as much as we can. There's certainly lots to talk about. Billy Gillis, District 15, Lower Sackville, Beaver Bank. Billy, anything you want to, you just coming off knee surgery. You came in hobbling today, but you're without crutches right now for the first time in a while, I hear.
Yeah, that's correct. So I had knee surgery 3 weeks ago, and today's the first day with no crutches. So yeah, I'm just hobbling around here.
Have you had a surgery before?
Yes. Yeah, I had the same surgery 22 years ago on the same knee. So.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Then you should start paying extra in taxes then.
Oh, don't get started.
But it is good though. What about the wait list? You were on a couple of years wait list? Or?
Yeah, I was on. I had an MRI like a year and a half ago, and just basically waiting for the surgery. So, and it came on January 28th. So
yeah, did you have to stay in hospital any amount of time?
No, just the afternoon.
Oh, good.
There for a couple hours and out.
Nice. And it's people say what they want about our healthcare system. But it's nice to be able to get something like that done and not get a $200,000 or $300,000 bill afterwards, eh?
Oh, isn't that one of the great joys of living here in Canada?
Yeah, that's right. Recently, I had brain surgery, as most people know.
Of course.
And it would have cost, I don't know, God knows what that would have cost me. I never would have had it in the United States. Wouldn't have been able to get it. So the healthcare system, as much as it's under pressure and criticized, it's pretty awesome too, right?
It is, yeah. I went to the Windsor Hospital, and the staff there were excellent.
Yeah, the healthcare staff is just unbelievable. The work that they do, the empathy that they have, and the care that they give is just second to none.
Yep, can't thank them enough.
All right, Shawn Cleary joins us here in studio. He hasn't had any surgery. He looks healthy as can be. Shawn Cleary, how are you?
I am doing well, Todd. And yes, no surgery and no Timbits. So.
Well, you're on the hot seat.
Yeah, that's right. What's cooking in your district?
You know what? Things are humming along right now. I've seen a few pieces of machinery on the sidewalks recently, and I see the temperatures are increasing with some rain in the forecast. Yep. So hopefully it's warm enough, long enough that helps melt it.
All right. I want to, by the way, the drill. Give us a call at 902-405-6000 if you'd like to chat with the counselors. And look, if you've got questions, they give us a call now. It is a great opportunity. And I do want to thank these 2 counselors and all the counselors for coming in and doing this, because it's obviously something that they don't have to do by any stretch. They volunteer their time to do it. And it's something that Rick started, of course, many years ago, and it's well listened to, and this is one of the segments that I get the most feedback on every week. So I thank all the counselors for doing this. But to that said, we've got some tough topics that we talk about, including this one. Halifax police say a 6-year-old child is in hospital after being stabbed in the city's downtown. Police say they responded to the report of a child with multiple stab wounds on the 1900 block of Barrington Street on Sunday afternoon. Child taken to hospital with life-threatening injuries. Police say the suspect, a 19-year-old woman, was located at the scene and arrested for aggravated assault. I'm not sure what you can add to any of this, gentlemen, but I guess just thoughts in general, Shawn.
Yeah, I don't have any more information than what was put out in the news release, but it is a terrible and sad situation, especially the way it's described with the person, the 19-year-old, not being known to the 6-year-old victim. And so I'm hoping more information becomes available soon so we can learn more about it. But just my heart goes out to the family. And I mean, what a terrible situation. I mean, I learned of this last night and we were having dinner, and I have my 18-year-old and my 24-year-old, actually 19-year-old now and 24-year-old, and I told them, and they were just stunned.
Yeah. Billy, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, same thing as Shawn. I mean, it's a terrible tragedy. I mean, it appears random, which is very scary. I mean, I don't know what else to say to that. I mean, we learned of this last night, and hopefully we'll hear more today, but scary, scary.
All right, people get some emails and just online chatter and all of that, and some people are suggesting that, and I don't know if there's any empirical evidence to back this up, but some people feel as though our streets are less safe than they once were. Shawn, what are your thoughts on that?
So actually, if you look at the budget documents, HRP put forward a package that included a number of statistics in it, and in general, we are about as safe now as we were in 2014, 2013.
Is that right?
And so if you look at the crime severity index, it has gone up slightly. Violent crime has gone up a little bit more, but we're below the national average. Mm-hmm. If you look at the number of calls that service calls that police take, it's relatively stable over the last 6 or 7 years. And so I don't, on any measure, it does not appear as if we are, empirically, does not appear as if we are less safe now than we were. Yeah. But certainly the perception is that we are, and that needs to be addressed because for a lot of people, their perception becomes reality.
Why do you think that the perception has changed?
There's certainly a lot more talk about it. I mean, radio shows like yours, if you look at the newspaper, in general, the media cover negative stories, and that gets more eyeballs than positive stories. Yeah. And since, and I don't want to blame everything on COVID, but since COVID, the mood in most places that I'm aware of has changed. It's become more negative, and that could be also a combination of social media and other things. But generally, people are just more pessimistic today than they were a few years ago.
Yeah. Billy, what are your thoughts on perception, do you think? I mean, we've got a homelessness issue. And again, we don't want to blame homelessness on this because that's generalization. We don't know any details, and I suppose by me saying that's probably inappropriate. But back to the perception. Perhaps that's what's at play. People say, oh, it must be some homeless person or somebody dealing with mental illness. Making assumptions, I think, is something that we can't get away. We can't do here.
Yep. Yes, I agree. I mean, there is a lot more people out around now for sure. Due to the homeless problem and stuff, there seems to be a lot more people now just hiding out everywhere, whether that's homeless people or just people addicted to drugs or whatever the case may be. It just seems, it seems just like Councillor Cleary that said since COVID, it's just, I don't know. There just seems to be a different attitude out there now. Yeah. I don't know if whether the guy down south has anything to do with that or not. Yeah. Just kind of bringing it out in people, and I don't know. It's just. Yeah.
Oh, okay. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. The guy down south, I assume you're talking about Mr. Orange Man Donald Trump himself?
I am, yes.
Yes. Look, I have no problem taking verbal pot shots at that guy, considering the way that he talks and refers to us as in a pathetic way. But anyway, we won't go down that cesspool yet anyway.
Of course.
902-405-6000. Steve, hello.
Hey guys, thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
Billy, congratulations on the being a new councillor in our district. The questions I got are twofold, or two parts. One is the traffic and congestion on the Beaver Bank Road. They changed the lights at Stokel and Beaver Bank Road. Since then, it's been absolutely atrocious. There's 3 new apartment buildings that have gone up on the Beaver Bank Road. I think off Trinity Drive, there's about 700 new homes slated to go in there. It's backed up for kilometers and kilometers and kilometers every morning, all the way back to, Barrett Lake. Is my first question. What's going to be done about that, and how quick can it be done? Like, the kids' school buses are late every morning, all kinds of stuff like that. And the other question I got is past Annie Drive, the sidewalk situation. I drove out this morning, and you got small kids waiting for buses on the side of the road, and they're pretty much standing on the road because there's nowhere to stand because there's no sidewalks. So just wondering what's going to be happening about those two issues.
Thank you for the question, Steve. Definitely traffic is top of mind. There is requests in right now to have the lights changed at Stokel and Millwood, have the timing changed a little bit. I'm not sure if that's going to make a huge difference in this or not. There is a new highway being talked about out there, the Beaver Bank bypass connector. That's, again, I'm trying to work with the MLA on that to see if we can get that sped up a little bit.
Who's the MLA?
Brian Wong.
Okay.
Yep. So we've had conversations, and he is trying to get everything done from his end. The municipality is not going to take on a project like that. So that'll have to be done with the partners in the provincial government. Short-term solution, Steve, there's not a short-term solution. I mean, we can't widen the road or anything there. There's just too many houses and stuff along the way there. But there is lots of talk. I am trying to get things done from my end. So hopefully that answers the first part of the question. The second part with regards to the sidewalks past Danny Drive there, again, there's a lot of sidewalk requests. I'm told, I think there's like 300 sidewalk requests a year, and we only get about 6 of them done every construction season. So try my best, doing everything I can to see if we can get the sidewalk extended out past there. But yes, I agree with you.
I got 2 suggestions. One,
okay,
we stop the development in Beaver Bank until there's a solution. And 2, you need to get some city staffers out there and sit on the Beaver Bank Road in the mornings when the dump trucks are driving by, damn near running over 6-year-old kids. So, and then there'll be some serious attention to it. But Lisa Blackburn had the same lip service answers, and obviously it's going to continue here. That when you get outside the city core and the rural areas, obviously it doesn't get as much of attention. But these are serious issues in growing neighborhoods, and if we're going to be a growing city and putting up development everywhere, you guys need to do your part.
Yeah, we're certainly trying. I live here too, Steve. So, I mean, I'm right in the middle of this with you every single morning. And, the traffic congestion just seems to be rush hour, basically in the morning inbound, and outbound at supper time. It seems to get kind of backed up there. But in the middle of the day, there's not that much traffic there. But we are working on it, like I promise you.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Appreciate it. Take care. 902-405-6000 needs 6 a year get done?
Something like that.
New sidewalks, and then there's another, depending on how many road paving projects we have going on, you'd have a number of sidewalk renewals.
Right.
But sidewalks are incredibly expensive for a number of reasons. You've got, obviously, the construction costs of actually building the sidewalk going up all the time. But usually those involve things like moving utility poles, buying land, because you've got to widen the road a little bit to grab that extra bit of right-of-way. And so they require a huge amount of planning. And the priority has always been, for the last 6-7 years, looking at how much pedestrian volume or potential you have in an area. Mm-hmm. And so this is one of the things that, unfortunately for Billy's district, because you have low density in a lot of these areas, you don't have a lot of people walking. And so if you look at Fairview, for example, where we're putting in sidewalks right now, you've got thousands of people. If you go up to Beaver Bank Road, you might have dozens of people walking. And so the priority goes to wherever you have the highest concentration of pedestrians.
So who makes those decisions? Is it staff? Is it transportation committee? Who decides what gets the green light? So
the criteria is set by council, but the staff would then put together the annual list that comes forward in the capital budget, which we just passed a little while ago. And so those projects are in there. And because it's an election year, the timing is a bit weird. But normally what would happen is in the fall, each councillor would meet with our transportation public works staff. And then we would talk about the projects that are on their list. We would give our feedback based on what we hear from residents and those kind of things. And then the final list would come to council in the capital book. Okay,
so the idea that if a councillor is eloquent enough or yells loud enough or is adamant enough, that's not at play here, is it?
No, we've tried to take that out as much as possible. So it's criteria-based, it is evidence-based, and then it is more fair. It may suck. You may have to wait your turn. But the days, 10, 15 years ago of someone going into the executive director's office and stamping their feet and yelling, we wanted to get away from that.
Right, yeah, and I think rightfully so.
Yeah.
902-405-6000, that's the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. We've got our councillors, Billy Gillis, Shawn Cleary here in studio, Give us a call. Get some open line for you. If you'd like to chat with the councillors, 902-405-6000. Councillors on the Hot Seat continues when we come back. All right, we've got our councillors in studio, Billy Gillis, Shawn Cleary. Give us a call, 902-405-6000. Get some open lines for you folks. If you'd like to chat with the councillors, now is a great opportunity. Again, 902-405-6000. That is the way to get in on the fun. Ian, hello.
Hello. I'm a resident of Beaver Bank, and my concerns are pretty much echo the last caller, Steve. I lived on the Beaver Bank Road for 18 years, and I finally got so tired of the traffic and the dump trucks, and I have two small children. I moved into the Monarch Estate area subdivision. Besides the traffic, there's also a sidewalk concern around the elementary school. You go there in the morning, there's no sidewalks extending down Monarch Drive. So I'm just wondering if there's any, again, plans to extend the sidewalk. And is there any plans to change the intersection of Wingate and Beaver Bank Road? Because you can't make a left without, you just can't get on the Beaver Bank Road if you want to take a left on any side street, I guess. Yeah, just want to know.
Yeah, thank you, Ian. To the first question regarding the sidewalks around the school up there, not as of yet, nothing on the horizon. It is quite congested there in the morning. I've met with the RCMP. I meet with the RCMP once a month, so I do bring that up to them that, they should have some extra patrols on in the morning to try to manage some of that. But again, they can't be everywhere. They got, lots of calls and stuff to do, so they can't be everywhere. And then the second part with the Wingate Drive intersection there, yes, I agree. That is a disaster. I turn left every morning out of there myself. I'm there probably 4 to 6 times a day going through there. I have been for a while. It's quite complicated there. There's many landowners involved and stuff. So in order to get anything done like lights or anything like that, it would have to be straightened out and, lights in it. But there is, like I said to the previous caller, there's a larger plan for out there that involves a big roundabout there, if possible. So I'm not sure short term, again, how we're going to get this done, because it's all tied into the highway that comes from Murchison Drive out through the back, and that eventually is going to connect on through Kinsack and into the Airtech connector that's currently under construction in Fall River. So, short-term fixes, like we are not going to redesign that on our own and put lights there if there's a grander plan by the province to connect all these. So I know it's painful, and it's probably going to be painful for another few years before we get something done, to be honest.
I've been hearing that for about 30 years.
Yes, I agree with you. This highway's been talked about, I think, since 1996, 20 years. Then it was shelved, and now with all the development and everything, we're trying to get it back on the table, and I'm really trying to push for this. So,
okay. Well, appreciate your help, Billy.
Okay.
Thanks, Ian.
Thank you, Ian.
Take care. 902-405-6000. Look, folks, go to open lines for you. Give us a call if you'd like to chat with the councillors. 902-405-6000. This is your opportunity to address or have something addressed that you feel needs to be discussed concerning the city or the district in particular, which the council represents. Billy Gillis, Shawn Cleary. Gentlemen, this story on the CBC website, Shawn, I'll get your take on it first, and then we'll go back to the phones. Legislation introduced by the Progressive Conservative government recently would give Nova Scotia Public Works Minister sweeping powers over transit and transportation infrastructure throughout the province. Public Works Minister Fred Tilley told reporters during a bill briefing that the changes to the Joint Regional Transportation Agency Act are intended to address traffic congestion and improve transportation options. The opposition leader says that this is another example of government overreach. What are your thoughts? Do you have any thoughts on this, Shawn?
Well, many thoughts. Some of them probably would need to be censored on air.
No, let it fly.
It appears Premier Palpatine is and his good buddy Dougie Ford there certainly love concentrating power. And what we've seen now is what the Ford government just did in November. They've given themselves the power to force municipality. And this is the other thing about the Joint Regional Transportation Agency. When it was set up, it was specifically to look at Halifax and then the municipalities that touch Halifax, although a little bit further going up into New Brunswick. How do we move people and goods in and out of Halifax? And now they've expanded to province-wide. So now they could do this to any municipality. They could force a municipality to build infrastructure that municipality didn't want to build.
Like the Windsor Street Exchange, for example.
Yeah. Correct. Well, and actually, it's weird. I'm actually in favor of redesigning the Windsor Street Exchange, except that it has to meet our criteria.
Right.
And we have major bus infrastructure that needs to go through there. So that's actually coming back to council tomorrow. But they could also then, for example, rip out bus lanes or rip out bike lanes.
Yeah.
And so, no, this is really concerning because the person who has the least experience in the urban environment and the person who knows the least about municipal government has now the power to force a municipal government to do whatever it wants.
Yeah. And Billy, what's your take on this?
Same thing. So this is Bill 24. It's got five or six bullet points in there, and it's government overreach. They basically have the power, if they want, to just reach in and do whatever they want and send us the bill. I don't know if you looked at that line in there.
Is that right, eh?
Yeah, they have the ability to do basically whatever they want and then send us the bill, which we would intend we'd have to pass on to the taxpayers, and that's something I'm against.
And look, we can only assume if they're going to put this in an omnibus bill, which they did, that they would intend to use it, right?
Oh, I have no doubt that the Premier definitely wants to use this, and if not use it explicitly, use it as leverage to make sure that we, municipalities in Nova Scotia do whatever he tells us to.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, Ravender, hello.
Hi there.
Hi there. Go ahead.
I have a question. Sorry, I live in West Bedford and on Sama Code, and then I have a question, and then I want to update regarding that connector highway that is proposed to connect 103 to 102. Is there any plan for that? Because if that happens, is that going to change the whole ecosystem of the West Bedford? Is that anytime going to be built sooner, or what's the plan on that?
So that would be a provincial plan. Those are provincial highways and a provincial plan to connect them together. And yes, it could have environmental impacts. And so we've been looking at this along with the provincial government because we've got obviously land in Blue Mountain Birch Cove and Bears Lake and all of those areas, and the province wants to develop a lot of this. And so the idea that you could connect many of these highways together to alleviate car traffic, well, I mean, there are costs to that. And so I don't know where it stands because it's not our project. That would be a provincial project. But I do know we're certainly looking at the impacts that it could have on us.
So that is sort of that is not happening?
I don't know. You'd have to ask the provincial government what their plan is on it. It's not a municipal project.
Are you talking about Highway 113, the proposed Highway 113? I think that's what it was called.
I'm not sure about the number, but it is a connector between 103 and 102, I believe,
Yeah, I think that's been on the books for quite a number of years. There's actually a sign in the woods there when you go hiking that says you're crossing the proposed Highway 113. So I'm not sure where that stands, to be honest with you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Ravender, that it for you?
Yeah, that's good. Thanks.
Okay, good stuff. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us for our Councillors on the Hot Seat. We've got Shawn Cleary and Billy Gillis here in studio. Again, 902-405-6000. We've got the councillors to the top of the hour. Got some open lines for you as well. Again, 902-405-6000. Councillors on the Hot Seat continues when we come back. All right, continuing with our councillors on the Hot Seat, talking municipal politics. We've got Billy Gillis and Shawn Cleary here in studio. And get some room and time for you as well to the top of the hour. Some open lines. Give us a call if you'd like to chat with the councillors. If you've got something to say, if you'd like to have something addressed, now is a great opportunity to do so. The ear of governance is here. 902-405-6000. That is the way to take part. Ahmed, hello.
Hello, good morning. How are you guys?
We're well.
Yeah, I have a question always in my mind. You know how busy sometimes, especially in the rush hour streets in Halifax are. And I'm wondering, why do they have on South Park Street and Spring Garden Road and on Hollis Street, two side parking spots, two sides biking lanes, and the traffic and even the bus cannot go through them. I wonder, why would they have these parking spots, especially in the wintertime when it's snow piling two sides and the car parked and the traffic is just one by one. The bus is squeezed in and the trucks going down the streets. Why would they do something about it? Why don't they eliminate the parking spots there?
Well,
to make the flow of the traffic.
A number of reasons, Ahmed. So in the summertime, obviously, if you have at South Park and Spring Garden, for example, if you're driving south on South Park, you have no problem with two vehicles being parked on each side and two vehicles in travel lanes passing by each other. In the wintertime, if the snow isn't cleared appropriately, as we've seen this past couple of weeks, then you end up getting that constriction happening. But the other thing is, so it's not a matter of not needing the parking spots, it's just better snow clearing. But the other thing is the business district would go nuts, as it did when we put the bike lane in, because we had to eliminate a few parking spots. And they're like, no, you can't eliminate any parking spots. And so parking in business districts are like gold. They don't want to give them up. And so that would be the reason why we don't do it. But really, it would be no issue at all if we just had better snow clearing, especially during those kinds of storms. Although with the ice storm we had, it was difficult to get right to the curb. But if it was cleared to the curb, there'd be no issue.
Squeezed in. I see the buses squeezed in. I wonder, why don't the drivers of the bus complain? Because they slow down the buses, plus the traffic is not going fluid as it should be, and the whole street is as well. So we don't, actually, the city does not need the parking spots in those main streets of traffic.
Well, the businesses on Spring Garden would definitely disagree with you on that.
Okay, that's what I want to say. It's always complaining from, not me as a driver, other drivers, I hear the same thing. And I wish they eliminate those parking spots so the traffic could go fluid, even rush hour, or, But yeah, that's what I mean. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for the call. Take care. 902-405-6000. Glenn, hello.
Hey there, how's it going?
Well, you?
Good. So to touch on what your last caller said, mine's similar, but it's more or less, I'm in Becky Kent's area, so it's not really pertaining to you guys as much, but it does, work on that bike lane thing. So, why don't they remove the pylons in the winter so the snow plows can clear the streets? Because, the streets get narrowed up, and then everybody's walking on the streets because they can't get on the bike lanes to walk, because it's a dual walk and bike lane. So the sidewalks are icy, the bike lanes are icy. You got the streets piled up with snow with where the plow can only reach. And then, it just makes sense to me to pull the pylons down in the winter and then put them back up in the spring. Half of them you lose every other winter anyway because the plow hits them.
Is there a particular street, Glenn, that you're thinking of? Because I know, for example, on Bell Road, for example, right, we do take the, they're called bollards. We take the green and white bollards out in the fall, and then we put them back in the spring. Yeah, so that actually happens.
Yeah, well, it doesn't happen. It hasn't happened since they went in Portland Estates.
Oh, I'm not familiar with those ones.
Yeah, no, that's Becky Kent's area, like I say. But I understand they're here to stay. They're not going anywhere. But common sense would do what you just said: pull them down, snowplow, and then if you're going to put them back up, put them up. So I don't know.
Interesting. I'll have to go look at them. I've never driven in Portland Estates.
Yeah, right by the Berkeley, right in front of there. That whole street's full of pylons, and they never come down.
Okay.
I picked up last year. I picked up 14 of them. So I'm just saying. So that's going to cost somebody some money.
Okay.
Yeah.
Billy, anything on it?
That's it. That's it.
Okay.
Well, thanks, Glenn.
Anything you want to add to that, Billy?
There's not much more I can add. I am familiar with the estates in there, but I'm not familiar with those exactly. So.
Okay, fair enough. 902-405-6000. Hello, Chris.
Good morning, gentlemen.
I thought I'd hear from you.
Todd, you're taking over where Kreskin left off. I guess you can read.
That's right.
Minds.
That's right. The old Johnny Carson trick. I got it all figured out.
That's right.
I was waiting for you, Chris.
Where are you, Shawn? How are you doing today?
No,
that was Billy.
It was Billy. But Shawn was too.
Oh, great. That's good. It was gleeful anticipation that I'd call. Look, it's a couple of things I want to talk about, but Shawn, you mentioned about Houston and Ford concentrating power and so on. Not to prejudge what you might be thinking on that, but doesn't it bother you a little bit more so that maybe they're taking power away from you guys?
Well, I mean, that's the concentration. So they devolved that power to us, and now they've taken it back.
Yeah, but you guys kind of do the same thing. You allow staff to have too much power in the decision-making, in my opinion. There's a severe lack of transparency and consultation down at City Hall. I mean, I've complained about this before. Everybody I talk to, literally.
Can you give me an example of a proposal that went through without consultation?
Okay. One of your councillors told me that this Morris Street University Avenue bike lane and roundabout at Carteret is going to cost $10 million. Is that correct?
No.
Oh, is it going to be more than that?
No.
Well, the councillor said I think it was last week on this show, that it was $10 million.
That's for the total.
No, in fact, there's a staff report that was at the Transportation Standing Committee last summer. And so you could see the information, which is all publicly available on halifax.ca.
Right. How many of the residents and property owners in that district and that area affected did you specifically notify about the changes upcoming?
They all got notified, and I would say 36 of them either came to Transportation Standing Committee or sent us emails or letters.
Okay, because I was talking to several people on Oakland Road that knew nothing about this. How were they notified? Like a flyer in the mail or something like that? Or
Oakland Road is not part of it.
Well, the roundabout comes down to, and I believe is going to be put in, is what I've been told. It's going to be put in at Carteret and Oakland Road.
Not part of the bike lane project on Morris University. I'm not familiar. We don't do roundabouts per se in residential areas. We have been experimenting with these kind of mini roundabouts. If you go up, say, for example, Dublin and Cork, or go up to the north end, there's one up there. And those are traffic calming measures, not part of bike lanes.
Right. Okay. Let's get to the budget for a second. 3 years. Have you decided basically what rate increase, or not necessarily rate increase, but tax increase we're looking at this year?
No, that's not decided until end of March, beginning of April.
But you're into the 7+%, correct?
Probably around 8 now if people keep adding. Yeah,
we're a little over.
8%.
And I gave, by the way, councillors the opportunity to save $12 million over 5 years and about $3 million over the next several years, and they decided not to.
Oh.
So increasing 14 new HRP officers or RCMP officers, body cams, dash cams, and also hiring 8 new staff for our HRP.
Right. Okay. Is there nowhere else that you think you can cut? Like this active transportation budget to me seems outrageous for what's being spent and been spent.
It's a tiny fraction of our overall paving budget. We spend about $60 million just paving roads.
Yeah, but okay. Well, there was $10 million that you said was going to be spent on that sort of thing. So that's $10 million. $10 million here, $10 million there, $1 million here, $1 million there. It adds up.
Sure. Yeah. So, but so does new police. So does new librarians. So does new everything. So what exactly, Chris, would you like us to cut? So here's the thing. You want us to cut what you want us to cut, and then I get a call from another resident who wants us to cut what they want to cut, and then I get another call from another resident that wants us to cut what they want to cut. Guess what? They're all different from each other. And so this is what we do, is we balance out all of those different perspectives from residents because they don't all agree. And so I'm not expecting you to agree with us.
No, I agree with a lot of things you guys do, but there's a lot of things I don't agree with. I don't know how seriously you actually try and cut back on things. Maybe you're very serious, but in 3 years, this will amount to about a 21% tax increase on our backs.
Yeah, but you also have to take into account the fact that in the 8 years I've been a councillor, in 2 years of those we froze your tax bills. In 4 years of those, we actually had tax increases that were lower than inflation. It's only been the last 3 years that we've had significant increase in the tax bill, and that's partly because all of the freezing and less than inflation increases we did earlier caught up with us because we need to add more infrastructure as more people move here, as more wear and tear happens. And so you get to a place where you finally have to pay the piper.
Yeah, no, I understand all that, but I've been hearing this. I've owned properties for 35 or 40 years, rental properties, and I heard this from councils long before you were ever a councillor. And they all said the same thing. We need a bigger assessment base. We need a bigger tax base. Once we have that, we'll be able to reduce taxes. It's never.
Oh, I've never said we were going to be able to reduce taxes.
No,
I said we could decrease the pressure, upward pressure on taxes, but we can't reduce taxes.
Well, what happened with, and I should ask him this, I guess, but what happened with Andy Fillmore going to freeze property taxes?
Well, you'd have to ask Andy. I believe he's going to be on your show in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Has that actually been discussed? Have you discussed that with the mayor, or has it actually been discussed at council?
Yes,
the possibility
we did.
Of freezing it?
Yep, and he voted for the 7.6 increase.
He voted for the 7.6 increase?
Correct.
Well, gee, that's a typical politician then, isn't it?
You'll have to ask Andy.
Billy, do you have anything to add to any of this?
Well, Chris, we're all working hard behind the scenes here. I mean, the first 2 days we spent 2 days questioning stuff that was in there, to see if we could possibly remove it or not. But there's not a lot of stuff we can take out of there. Like to Shawn's point there about the police officers. Well, we started off the top here talking about a kid that was stabbed, right? So we want more officers. So, 22 new officers, that includes 6 RCMP officers. So, I mean, can we take that out? I mean, I'm not sure.
Does the police officer, the increase in police officers or fire, whatever it might happen to be, is that more or less coinciding with the population increase?
Yes. In there is a new RCMP not a detachment, like a what do they call them? A community office there for Fall River. So that's going to be staffed with 4 new officers, I think, and a sergeant. And there was also another one. I'm trying to remember now where the other one was, out in David Hensby's district somewhere. Plus, and then new HRP officers. So yes, as the population grows, we need more firefighters, more police, more fire stations, police cars, the whole works, right? So it's...
Right. So generally, because of the population increase, you should theoretically be getting more property taxes as well, because there's new buildings being built everywhere. I look around and there's nothing but cranes to be seen. One other quick thing. What about the $600,000 or so on this armored vehicle? Is that approved?
It's on the budget adjustment list, meaning we'll have another discussion on March 19th of whether to add those. So a lot of the stuff that Billy was talking about, the 8.3 or 8.4, whatever we're up to now, those are tentative. So we'll have a second go at those on March 19th to see if we add them or take them away, or possibly take other things away.
Hey, Chris, listen, got a boogie. Right. Thanks for the call, pal.
Okay, thanks, guys.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with the councillors when we come back.
Thanks.
All right, we've got Billy Gillis, Shawn Cleary here in studio. We got some room for you as well. 902-405-6000. A pretty tame affair so far, Billy. It must be you calming people down.
It's the Timbits.
It's the Timbits. It's the Timbits. It's calmed everybody down.
It's all the sugar.
That's right. All right. Well, we'll see if we can heat things up in the next couple of minutes. Brenda, hello.
Good morning. How are you, Todd?
I'm well. You?
Good to have you back. You were missed during the time you were off.
Thank you.
So my question is, I live on the end of Baker Drive, and there's a lot of residential out here, as you well know, and especially with the low-income housing. Now, we have bus stops here, and, of course, a lot of people in the area work at the Dartmouth Gym. So I'm wondering, is there any way we can get some bus shelters on Baker Drive?
You can either call 311 or email your counselor, call your counselor, and they could put a request in. And again, it's criteria based. So they would look at the number of people that are waiting or getting on and off the buses at those locations. And if the threshold is high enough, or if the number of people are over the threshold, then they'll put the bus shelters in.
Yeah, because I don't depend on transit myself. I'm retired, thank goodness. But when I drive by, I see these people just freezing to death on the bus at the bus stops, and it's like, why don't we have shelters? Because the population out in this area has just exploded, especially now with the low income off Mount Hope there. So I'm just wondering. So I should get a hold of my councillor then, or call 311.
Yep. Either way, I mean, it's always good to chat with your counselor. Send your counselor an email because they can advocate for it with transit. But they do have a formula that they use for number of alightments and people getting on the bus.
Okay, perfect. That's all I needed to know.
Okay, that was easy. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Take care. 902-405-6000. 80. Hello, 80.
Hey, how are you?
Well, you?
Good. Just a quick question. I travel Robie Street and I turn on the Quimple every day, but last week they put you can't turn left on the Robie off or left on Quimple off of Robie anymore. Just wondering what's the reason why.
I think that's and that's going to happen. Yeah, I think that's going to happen now for the next little while because the hospital project there, the redevelopment of the QE, they've extended that out and they've had to change even pedestrians now. You can't cross. They've closed the sidewalk on the Robie Street side. And so that's all part of that reconfiguration of the intersection. And I think I heard the minister talking about this the other day. I think the construction peaks around 2027 and continues into like 2030 or 2031. Hopefully most of that is interior after that point. But I think that intersection is going to be a mess for the next couple of years.
Sounds good. Just a quick question. Thank you, guys. Love
the
show.
Thanks for the call.
Thanks, Eddie.
Appreciate it very much. 902-405-6000. I mean, that whole hospital redevelopment that's a scary amount of money, but it's needed and great economic vibrancy for the city, Shawn, eh?
Yeah, well, yes, it is. There's lots of economic activity that happens from that kind of large-scale construction, and but it also is it's bad for our city budgets too because we're competing them with the same contractors for road work and other things. ARCP is doing a lot of the work there, and so you've got to manage it so that you're not having so much work happening that you're just competing against different levels of government and driving up your own prices. So that is a consideration I know our staff are looking at. But yeah, it's great. I mean, in this province, we have not invested in healthcare in a major way in decades, but we've grown our population, especially here in HRM. And so the investment is massive for us. And it will be for future generations.
Yeah, Billy?
Very welcomed, for sure. Yeah. For sure. That is definitely something we need. I mean, that hospital serves Atlantic Canada, so... Yeah.
And some people have suggested that why not build it in the outskirts or whatever, but I think in a city like Halifax with the downtown core and densification and all that, it's the location. It's got to stay there, Billy. What are your thoughts?
Agreed. I mean, every major city in the world, the hospitals are right downtown. I mean, and that too, with the rest of the complexes that are there, to move that part of the hospital somewhere else just wouldn't make sense.
Dow and all that's right there.
Dow, the medical facilities. Yeah. And,
Shawn, I assume you're going to echo that?
Yeah, you've got the co-location of all the expertise that's there, and as soon as you move that away, you break that continuity. But don't forget the provincial government. They put the clinic out in Bears Lake just recently. Yeah. They're doing the hospital renovate or the hotel renovation that Shanix is now part of. That they're building into a I forget what it's called now, some sort of recovery center. And then, there's investments happening, I believe, at Cobequid. There's, if you look at some of the outlying hospitals, and you said you got your knee done in Windsor.
Windsor, yeah.
And so, it is a province-wide approach, I think, to healthcare. Certainly it's not something I'm involved in or know much about. Right. But, if you're within an hour drive, you've got a lot of hospital choice.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Okay, last we only got a couple of minutes, but I wanted to get to this. The Halifax Regional Municipal Councillor is asking the CAO to provide an update regarding the municipality's buyback rights for the site of the former Bloomfield School in light of a recent fire. Shawn, this has been ongoing, long. What are your thoughts on this?
So whatever we do, and that was Councillor Hinch up here in the North End who's bringing that forward, we have to obviously look at what is legally allowed within the contract for the purchase and sale of the Bloomfield site to bank that we have in place. So you can't break the law. So whatever we do has to be inside that agreement. But there's two issues here. One is the safety of the site prior to the fire, and now with the fire it's being demolished. But then you also have the fact that, this was something that the city originally, before I got on council, sold to the province. The Dexter government bought it. They were going to do affordable housing here. McNeil came in. They didn't want to do it, so they gave it back to the city. We had to go through the process again to sell it. We've missed a number of years where that could have been housing and other aspects to the agreement, because it's supposed to be affordable housing, affordable arts and cultural space, open green space that's publicly accessible, plus the housing. And so my fear is this just drags on and we don't have the development happening that we absolutely critically need to have.
Billy, just any comment on this?
Yeah, I can't add much more to that. Shawn's a wealth of knowledge there with the history on that place. I think half it's tore down right now. I'm not sure if they're taking the other half down or not, but it definitely needs to have something done with that site. It's been like that for, I don't know how many years, 15 years probably or so. So we definitely need to move forward with something there.
Okay, gentlemen, it's an hour flies by pretty quick when you're having fun, eh?
Does it ever?
Yeah, appreciate it, Shawn. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Billy, thank you for coming in. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having us.
All right, you got it. That's Billy Gillis. That's Shawn Cleary. And that is our Councillors on the Hot Seat. Next, we get time for you and your calls, 902-405-6000. We'll be back.
Thanks.
All right, taking your calls, 902-405-6000. Look, folks, this is a story that's tragic, it's troubling, and I'm not sure if any of you want to weigh in on it or not. I don't know how much there is to say about it, but Halifax police say a 6-year-old child is in hospital after being stabbed in the city's downtown. Police say they responded to a report of a child with multiple stab wounds in Barrington Street area on Sunday afternoon. A 19-year-old woman is in custody, arrested with aggravated assault. They say the victim and suspect are not believed to be known to each other. So I guess one of the questions that I'll throw out there is it safe to say that perhaps and Shawn Cleary said that there's no empirical evidence to back up that the city is more dangerous, more violent, less safe than it used to be. To the contrary, he suggested that the evidence would show that it is not any less safe. Do you agree with that? Do you feel on our streets less safe for whatever reason? And certainly reasons like this story would amplify that. But what are your thoughts on this, folks? I mean, we live in a civil society, but civility is a thin veneer. It really is when you think about the rule of law. The rule of law is very, very precarious at best at times. So what are your thoughts on where we live and the sense of being secure and safe when things like this happen? Look, it could have been completely random. We don't know. We know very little detail about it. Certainly we don't know the motivation. It could be anything. And we could speculate all day, but I guess the question is, do you feel less safe on the streets today in Halifax? That's one of the questions that I want to pose to you. Also, the Nova Scotia government has taken a giant step backward in accountability and transparency with the introduction this week of a contentious omnibus bill, or last week rather, political observers and access to information experts say. Among other things, the bill made it possible for the Premier's Conservatives to fire the province's Auditor General without cause, effectively eliminating the independence of a key officer of the Ledge. This, according to David Johnson, a professor of political science at Cape Breton University. He says it's an example of enormous and unwarranted executive overreach. He said in an interview, do you agree with what the professor says here? Is he right? Is this government abusing its power with its 2/3 supermajority? With a huge omnibus bill with all kinds of layers in it, including this one, which impacts the Auditor General, who I had on the show on Friday. The ability to dismiss the Auditor General without cause, to censor her reports, I think is an affront to democracy. It's egregious. I've received lots and lots of emails of people talking about this, and just about every one of them agreed with what I had to say. Because I don't really see how there's a good argument to justify having this. Anyway, what are your thoughts on that? Are you paying attention to this? 902-405-6000. Also, the candidates in the race to be the next leader of the Liberal Party of Canada squaring off tonight for the first of 2 live debates. Tonight it will be in French. Tomorrow will be in English. Do you care? Are you paying attention to this? Chrystia Freeland, Mark Carney, and others, are you paying attention to what's going on with the Liberals? And do you feel as though there's a surge, because polling would indicate a bit of a surge for the Liberals here with this leadership going on, and it appears as though that Mark Carney, and there's a little bit of a love-in for some with Mark Carney. Now, I've listened to a lot of different podcasts and read a lot of different stuff, and there's a lot of people that have serious concerns about Mark Carney. In particular, his connections with business connections. He's got all types of holdings. He would have to open up a blind trust. There's the carbon tax situation. Although he says that he will remove the consumer-facing carbon tax, he still believes in a carbon tax, believes that big emitters would be the ones that should pay. But ultimately, there's a good argument out there that will eventually trickle down to user pay and could be more expensive when all is said and done. So what are your thoughts on Mark Carney? What are your thoughts on Pierre Poilievre? Is he doing a good job to stay relevant and to perhaps quell some of this groundswell of the Liberals? 902-405-6000, and whatever else you want to get into. Again, 902-405-6000. Let's kick it off with Ed. Hello, Ed.
Good morning, Todd. I hope your recovery is going well.
Yeah, I'm doing well.
You sound like it. Anyway, I've been listening to all your comments this morning. What I called in about is one section of them, and that's the treatment of our Auditor General, who is a very big part of the checks and balances we have on government here. And what the Houston government is trying to do is put a gag on her and intimidate her with the thought that she may lose her job or any future Auditor Generals following her. So I don't know if this on the Houston government's part, this anti-democratic legislation is due to ego or corruption, probably both. But I think I'd like to see happen what's not going to happen. I'd like to see the regular progressive conservative MLAs in the legislature stand up and vote against this legislation.
What do you think the chances of that are of happening?
Absolutely zero.
Zero.
Yeah, because both federally and provincially, there's too much power in the PMOs, in the Prime Minister's office, and in the Premier's office. MLAs shouldn't just be pawns to warm seats in this province. They should actually have an important role to play. And if they don't stand up against this anti-democratic legislation, it shows they really just are warming seats and taking paychecks. I would like to see this matter personally. I don't know if it can be. I don't know if there's any rationale for it. I'd like to see this being taken to court and tried in the courts as well to see if there's some way to stop.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I don't know if it could be challenged in the courts, and it should be. But Ed, you raise a good point in that the 2/3 MLAs, so 40 whatever number of conservative MLAs, PC MLAs. I'm sure that if you were to talk to them in private, and they were honest with you, and they felt they could confide in you, would tell you that they don't like this legislation, that it's an overreach. But they'll set their own personal standards aside for political gain and to go along with the party. And I think that's sad that we don't have people with integrity. And because if you feel a certain way and you feel convicted, but you decide to set that aside, that means you're compromising your integrity. Simple as that, isn't it?
I think in a lot of cases, the paycheck overcomes any integrity. They can look to themselves first instead to the province. I mean, what's the next thing for the Houston government? I don't know if it's legal at all, but what are they going to do? Set 20-year terms so they can stay in power simply because they have a huge majority? I can tell you, I won't be voting progressive conservative again, and I always have, until Mr. Houston is no longer the head of that party.
Well, okay. Thanks for the call. Appreciate it. Take care. 902-405-6000 on the fracking and the uranium mining and the natural resources thing. I personally am a proponent of exploring those things. I get it that there are health concerns, and look, we're going to talk later in the show about it, as a matter of fact, when I chat with the Nova Scotia doctors warning of health risks from fracking and uranium mining. So, look, I believe in a balanced conversation, but largely, for the most part, I think that these are opportunities that we should explore. So I, at least to some degree, support that. What I don't support is the fact that they did not campaign on it, did not mention it, not a word on it, not a peep. But at the first opportunity that they had to jump on it, they did so. And that is what my concern is with the way that they rolled this out. 902-405-6000. James, hello.
Hi, excuse me. I'm calling as a follow-up to your councillors on the hot seat.
Sure.
I was unable to call during that time. The issue of Bloomfield School, I think it's a significant, obviously following the recent large fire and so on. I think it raises the issue of can either the city or the province, I don't know the jurisdictions and the law, but somebody should do something to provide both incentives and penalties to developers to make sure that they develop properties that they own in a reasonably timely manner. Bloomfield has been forever, and I happen to live in Halifax across the street from a apartment building being constructed by the exact same developer as Bloomfield. Mm-hmm. If you want me to name it, I will. But,
sure, go ahead.
Okay, Bank, B-A-N-C,
yeah.
Bank Properties, and they're a big company around town. And I say both incentives and penalties because penalties are good, but on the other hand, maybe there's, I don't know, you get a bonus. You get to add one floor if you develop it within a year or two. Last point, the one that I'm looking at out my window as I speak has been under construction now for 4 years, 8 months. That's a long time.
Yeah.
And there's obviously having construction, the traffic is affected and there's lots of downsides to the neighbors during the construction period. Anyway, just a thought, because I think the same issue occurs elsewhere, that developers buy a property and then for whatever reasons either sit on it, like Bloomfield, they haven't done a thing. Well, they boarded up a few windows, and then here at this apartment building just disrupt the neighborhood for 4.5 years.
Yeah.
Anyway, there you go.
Okay, thanks for the call. Appreciate it. Take care. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, taking your calls. The way to reach us is 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. Quick email. Then back to the phones. This email from Glenn says, lots of core Pierre Poilievre supporters are saying Carney can't change the Liberals. The leader is stuck with the old troops. Well, back in 1979, Lee Iacocca took over a bankrupt Chrysler Corp, and he, as the CEO leader, completely changed its direction and made it very profitable during his time as CEO. So I'm saying Carney can change the Liberals, and I'm leaning to him, as Poilievre just seems to be Trumpish, and that is the last thing Canada needs. That comes from Glenn. I will say this, that Mark Carney does have his fingerprints on this Liberal government. He's been, I do believe, since 2000, or rather 2020, Trudeau's advisor. And to what capacity that role has been, I'm not sure how involved he's been. But Carney has had his fingerprints on this Liberal government. So I think if I'm Pierre Poilievre or if I'm Chrystia Freeland, she can't say anything because she was his finance minister. But if I'm Pierre Poilievre, that's his main attack when you hear Poilievre, is that's his message. He's saying you are getting, when you vote for Mark Carney, if you support Mark Carney, you're voting for the same thing that you've gotten all along, because he has been behind the scenes for a number of years. And that's true. I think that is absolutely true and needs to be considered. 902-405-6000. Hello, Bill.
How you doing, Todd?
Hey, I'm well, you?
Pretty good. Well, I should say pretty good. So-so.
Okay, well, so-so is not bad. I've been way worse than so-so.
Have you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's. I do my best. When I wake up in the middle of the night, a couple hours, it's either on the internet or thinking, and it just the thinking thing, it just flows through the ideas and thoughts and so on. Now I don't know if anybody's brought this up before. Got a couple for you here. Trump with his 25% tariff on the goods for Canada and Mexico. What would happen if all of a sudden Europe, China, other countries, all of a sudden, and Canada and Mexico, all of a sudden decide, well, I think we better play the same game. We're going to charge you, USA, 25% or 20%. What's your thoughts on that one? Just to start me off.
Well, we are doing that. We're having reciprocal tariffs here in Canada. That's a response. So that is happening, right? And I do believe Mexico is doing the same thing. So I think that I think the Americans could be are playing a very dangerous game here of isolationism. I think that it's, and I'll be talking to Mark Brewer, University of Maine political science professor, about all this later in the show. But Bill, I think that it's you're going to see the more people they isolate, and the more isolated they become, the more vulnerable they'll become, and I think that they leave us no choice but to do this.
Yeah, well, that's a good one. Now, here's the other one. I'm trying to put an ad in the Herald Mail. I've been for some time. In
the Chronicle, in the what?
Well, Chronicle Herald, I guess.
Okay, yeah.
Now, I'd like to see your listeners try this one out, because this is not something new. It's a shame. Old Dennis that owned the Herald Mail and had a nice big building. It's a shame how this has gone down. But here, you'll hardly see an ad in the paper anymore. My son puts a little ad in for the flea market on the weekend. I'm thinking about a little ad. In fact, that's what I was going to do today. Your listeners have to go through this, because you call up. I don't think, first of all, they got a receptionist there at all. And I'm not talking about just today. This is an ongoing thing now for months and months. You get nothing, and they leave a little message. And finally, I left a message yesterday. I finally got a call today from a little lady there. First of all, I hate to say this, but couldn't hardly make out what they actually said. That's the first of all. All she's going on about, send an email. I said, I want to send it for you to write it down so you can put it in. That's what I want. After a lot of pushing and shoving, I finally got her. And then she called back, made a mistake, didn't realize she had already called me. I'll tell you, that newspaper, I hate to say it, and I get the paper, is in a mess for advertisement particularly. Mm-hmm. So that's that one. I don't know if I'd love your listeners to chase down that one. But here's one other little one. A good friend of mine, he checks with me every day to see if I'm alive and kicking and so on. Don Marks. Okay, Don Marks, he called me up, and we were talking. We got on to the public gardens. And I didn't know this, but he said he's going on about this tree from the Lions Club. And I was now trying to figure what, because I used to be King Lion of Halifax. And I'll tell you, I said to him, I said, we've got to get together. Maybe we do once a year some kind of little special event and put some extra flowers there. I'm going to have to track that down. I don't know who else knows all that, but this is a brand new one on me. But there you are, Todd, for today, such as it is.
Okay, pal. We'll try and be better than so-so.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right,
sir.
buddy. Take care. 902-405-6000. Doug, hello.
Hi, how you doing?
Well, you?
Pretty good. My subject was kind of covered pretty good by a fellow about three spots ahead of me there, but I was calling on the AG. I totally agree. That's a real sleazy, underhanded thing to do that you only do if you got in your future plans that you're going to cover something up that you don't want broadcast.
That's right.
And I agree that the MLAs are probably too spineless to get up and go against it. But I will say, I called mine right away. Mine is Ken Rogers, the fisheries minister. His secretary definitely agrees with me as a taxpayer and a voter. She says she's 100% agrees with what they're saying. I guess she had got quite a few quite a few calls on it. He didn't get back to me, but I didn't ask for it. I get him to get back to me, but I'm like the last guy. I voted for them, but I'm not going to vote again. The way things are going, I don't see me voting for them again. And on the fracking end of it, I also agree that while I don't mind the conversation, that it's probably a good thing that we re-explore some of this stuff to see if there's any value in extracting any minerals or natural gas or whatever. I don't have a problem with that, but it was, again, a sleazy way to go about it.
Yeah, exactly. It's the way to do it. Campaign on it. If they wanted to revisit it, campaign on it, right?
That's right. Just say we're going to be reevaluating it. And I can tell you what, they probably would have lost a lot of votes in the rural areas if they had done that. So that's exactly why they didn't do that. They deliberately covered it up.
Yeah.
And so you're getting a government now that just feels it's so powerful that it can do anything that it wants to do and screw you. Is about where it is right now. But I will say, if everybody that's listening to this that doesn't want these cover-ups calls their MLAs, maybe if enough of them hear about it and talk to each other, somebody might grow a spine. But I think they're probably going to be like the Republicans in the United States. Nobody's got a spine when it comes to talking to the boss.
Okay, Doug, appreciate the call. Take care. 902-405-6000. We get some open lines for you folks. Give us a call, 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, continuing with your calls, 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. Something that I was remiss in not mentioning was the fact that, of course, it's been 3 years since the invasion of Ukraine. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau pushing back on Russia's narrative that Ukraine bore responsibility for igniting the war. He says the fighting began 3 years ago because of Russia's desire to erase Ukrainian history and expand their empire. Trudeau spoke today at a peace and security summit in Kyiv on the third anniversary of Russia's invasion. He announced that Canada will send $5 billion in aid to Ukraine using funds from seized Russian assets and pledged 25 light armored vehicles to Ukraine. This is Trudeau's fourth visit to Ukraine since 2022. So something else that you can talk about, folks. What are your thoughts on this? The third anniversary of the invasion of Ukraine, and with the United States and Donald Trump now, it's pretty evident that where he stands on this, and he and Putin seem to be chumming up about all of this, which is hard to fathom. It actually is, but no longer being able to rely on the United States is what's evident here to support this Ukrainian battle against the invaders, the Russians. Where does this end? How does this land? How does this all shake out? And how much support will the West continue to pour into Ukraine, including Canada? That's something else you can talk about. 902-405-6000 or whatever else you've got in your mind. It's an open hour. Give us a buzz. 902-405-6000. Len's giving us a call. Hello, Len.
Good morning, Todd. Beautiful day. Nice spring day.
Yeah, it looks like it, doesn't it?
You know, I just want to say one thing. You know, I'm not going to vote Liberals in this next election, and the reason why, well, first of all, Mark Carney is a good man. He's done a great job when he was governor of the bank in Canada and when he went to Europe. But the only reason I'm not going to vote for Liberal this time, and has nothing to do with Carney, it's just that they were in power for over 9 years. And every time you leave a party in that long, it's not good because they start to be able to do whatever they want. And so I say, let somebody else have a chance for a change. And so my objective is we were all going to vote for Conservative anyway, since he was going to take away the carbon tax. And now everybody else has jumped on board on that. Whether they were going to do it or not, I don't know. But it's not fair, really. And I think we should give the Conservatives a chance now, because the other party have done I don't think they've done a great job myself in the 9 years or more that they were in. So let's give somebody else a chance.
What are your thoughts on Pierre-Paul Evan's ability to fix things, as he says, to fix the budget and to fix the crime and fix the housing and all that he says he can fix?
Well, I think that's a lot of politics myself as far as in either party gets in, because once the party gets in, they'll always have an excuse why they can't do it, is because they didn't know what the books were like. And so it's the same old question, Todd. Until they get in, they don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
So, but to me, they should be allowed to look at the books before they get in. But anyway, let's give the other party a chance and have a good day.
Okay, take care. 902-405-6000. Look, when it comes to Pierre-Paul Evan's messaging, it's like they will reference the 10 cities, of course, the homelessness, the addiction, the crime. They will reference, of course, people's affordability challenges. These are all real issues and real challenges that have happened under the Liberal watch. They have. And again, this is what Mark Carney's going to continue to drive home. And he's going to continue to talk about carbon tax. Because although the consumer-facing carbon tax is going away with Mark Carney, the carbon tax is still going to be applied. It's just going to be applied at a different target. Big emitters, as he calls them. And trading of credits and all types of kind of voodoo economics. But we all know ultimately, folks, everything ends up trickling down to the consumer. The consumer will pay ultimately always. And there's a good argument out there to be made that large companies, mineral companies, whatever it is, energy companies, manufacturing, that if they can go to a jurisdiction that has less taxes and no carbon tax, and they can set up shop elsewhere, they will go there. And that does drive investment money out of the country. That's just the reality. 902-405-6000, that is the way to reach us. Barry, hello.
Hello there.
Hi there.
It's true, but I think people ought to ask a lot of questions of the Conservative. We need to have more than one party. And the Liberal Party is a chameleon party. It's slightly right-wing, like they were under Chrétien, and then they're left as can be because they needed the NDP to stay in power.
Yeah.
And this is a party that doesn't. That's what they are. They're a chameleon party. It's kind of embarrassing. The Conservatives, we don't know exactly who they are. Right now, with the United States, there was that 50 state people were all complaining about it, and the big thing they were saying was no to Trump, no to KKK, no to fascist USA. Well, all of these ones, and they had a whole bunch of people that voted for Trump. If they had been looking and asking the right questions or watched what he was saying, maybe they wouldn't have voted for him. So when we vote this time, let's ask our parties direct questions. Make sure we know what they are. And if they're too mega type, don't vote for them. Not because we just need a change. Because sometimes change can be worse instead of better.
How would you define two mega type, Barry?
For granted anymore.
Barry, what definition would you say? Give me an example of what 2 mega is.
Coming out that there's only male and female. There is no other. He says stuff in.
Paul Evans, to my knowledge, has not said anything about that. I've not heard him say anything about that.
I've listened to him.
I could be wrong. If I'm wrong, somebody please send me the information. But
maybe they're. Look, I don't think they're that far. And there's a lot of.
No, but you're speculating, right? And that's fair. You can speculate. This is what this is all about.
I was called a fool. If you'd watched last night, what's his name? Trump at the CPAC.
Yeah.
That's how they ended it with the salute. You know what salute it was. And I was a nutcase for saying that was the fastest country. That's the fastest outfit. I was a lunatic. Well, when Bannon put his arm up last night, it's not even going to be shown on the news anymore. It's happening so often amongst them right now that it's a fascist party, and they're not even hiding the fact. So I'm not saying they are. The Conservatives are. I'm just saying we should watch every party before we vote to see what they're doing.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay, all right, Barry. Thanks for the call. Appreciate it. Take care. 902-405-6000. Look, I'm not a strong proponent of suggesting or speculating that Pierre Poilievre is Trump North. I think that there are definitely some commonalities when it comes to how the approach, but I think they would have to go a very, very long way to the right, and I mean a long way to the right, before they would ever even come close to what is going on in the United States right now and what we're seeing with Elon Musk. I mean, can you imagine? It would be unfathomable to think that anybody would be elected Prime Minister of Canada, and then that Prime Minister would then appoint somebody unelected, multi-billionaire with numerous conflicts to go in and make sweeping changes and cuts within a month to the public sector. Just hack it away. I mean, that, folks, if that's what's happening in the United States right now. I'm not even making this up. And people will say, well, look at all the wasteful spending that they're of course you're going to find wasteful spending. Yes, absolutely. Do I think that if you did a forensic audit of the federal government here in Canada, that you could find and ridiculous spending where you would just say, what is this program for? And what do these people do? Of course. But that said, you still have to have an approach, and you still have to be systematic about how you do things and methodical and have some sense of humanity about how you go about it. Flailing a chainsaw at an event saying we're hacking bureaucracy is just pathetic. This is what we're dealing with. So do I think Pierre Poilievre is on the cusp of that? Absolutely not. I do not believe that. Maybe you call me a fool. But I think he's a far cry from that. I think that Pierre Poilievre is looking for fiscal accountability and responsibility, and I don't think that there's anything I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But would I approve of what's going on in the United States if that were happening here? No, I would be outraged. Beyond outrage. 902-405-6000. Gloria, hello.
Lovely day, Todd. Good day to be Canadian, eh?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
Hey.
Hey, that's right. That's right.
Todd, I'm calling about these dangerous and unsightly buildings. That building is there because the councillor was not doing his job. I had a Y building, the YMCA building in Dartmouth, where they emptied it, they left it there. There were fires, the police had to go there, the firemen had to go in that dark place. I brought them to the Dangerous and Unsightly Committee. They fought, I got enough support, they tore it down. The same thing with the old golf building on Prince Albert Road. They closed it, they were going to leave it there. They didn't want to spend the money. I met a guy who worked there, I happen to know him, and I said, I'm taking them to Dangerous and Unsightly. He told me he went back and said, you don't want her on your case. They came, we went, they tore it down. That can happen, Todd. There is no reason for those buildings to be left there like that.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. You're absolutely right.
They're just not doing their job. And there's a lot of that going around.
Yeah, can't disagree with you. Can't disagree with you. And why not, right? Why not do the job and get these? If there's a will, there's a way, right? You know that.
And there has to be a will.
Yep, there has to be a
and
desire.
There is a way.
Yep.
And as far as what's going on down below, the Americans will wake up when it's too late.
Yeah, I'm starting to feel that way, that they're going to lose control.
Yeah, and I think they're starting to feel that way.
Yep, for sure.
But we even have Democrats down there saying we should be the 51st state.
Well, listen, I read a story this morning, and the ambassador from Canada to the United States, and I reached out to her office because I'd like to talk to her. But she claims that there's not a whole lot of that conversation going on, that she doesn't hear this 51st states thing enough. And you know what, Gloria? Perhaps we're guilty of perpetuating this ourselves by always talking about it. Every time he brings it up, we bring it up. When we talk about it, maybe we should just ignore the idiot. Yeah, maybe we should just ignore this clown for a while.
Yeah,
perhaps.
I like the column. I don't know if you read the column in the Herald written by Stephen Harper.
Yes.
He had a column in there. I thought it was a good column.
Yep, for sure. Gloria, thank you for calling.
Okay, thanks, Todd.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. And listen, I forgot about Pierre Poilievre's comments that he made concerning this in the National Post. He did waffle, of course, on the two gender thing, saying that can you name other genders for me to consider? So Pierre Poilievre, in his passive aggressive way, I guess said the same thing, which to me, it bothers me even more. At least have the gonads to come out and say what you think. Don't hide behind your passive aggressive comment. So yeah, I'll give you that. Poilievre has made comments about two genders. So, and at least wear it. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, taking your calls, 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us. So let's see, where are we going next? Let's talk to Jim. Hello, Jim.
How you doing, Todd?
Well, you?
Good. I want to discuss the Trump-Poilievre ticket.
Okay.
And I also want to discuss support for Carney. He's doing the French debate tonight, which I will be definitely watching, and the English one tomorrow night. I'll give you 3 reasons why I wouldn't vote for any conservative today. I'll tell you why. First of all, it's not the Conservative Party that most people knew of. Mulroney, Joe Clark, even Harper, for that matter, to some extent. Poilievre has. I still remember the truckers' blockage in Ottawa when I couldn't get my diabetic medicine because Poilievre was up there hugging those guys and encouraging them to keep up the blockade. Plus, he wants to freeze out foreign aid, and he wants to take that money and put it toward Canada's military to make us more warriors, all that kind of talk like Trump. And let me see, what else could I pick out here? Oh, Canada's not broken. It's never been broken. Yet all of a sudden he embraces the flag now and says we're broken. Crime is not rampant everywhere in the streets. You can still take your kids to school without getting shot. You can still walk the streets with pretty good safety. And so I'm not a big fan of this far right-wing Conservative Party led by Poilievre. And I don't think he's ever going to be Prime Minister between you and I. So I support Carney because he's going to be the best guy to go at Trump.
Well, listen, it's just that Carney has been around the Liberal fold for 5 years now, and a lot of the problems that we're dealing with, he has some fingerprints on, does he not?
He's got some, but he was never in government. Okay.
Well, nobody had.
He was never part of the Liberal government. Poilievre can't go at Trudeau now because he's gone in 2 weeks. So now he's going to go what he calls the carbon tax Carney. So now he's going to embrace the flag, which he never really did before. So those are just my opinions in regard to why I would never vote for that Conservative Party. And I will say I can predict a hockey game.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I can predict an election. But if Trump keeps going on the way he is, I will say Poilievre will never be Prime Minister.
Does it bother you at all, Jim, that he hasn't lived really in the country for 10, 11 years, anything like that?
Who's that?
Carney.
Who's that? Carney?
Yeah.
Oh, he's been around most. He'll explain that tonight and tomorrow night. No, that doesn't bother me. My God, no. That was the old Ignatieff type argument.
Yeah.
They're nitpicking.
And it worked. And it worked then too, didn't it?
It's not going to work this time. It's not going to work because Carney has an answer for that. I think he's better qualified than. When did Poilievre sit down and talk and deal with anybody else the other side of the table? When did he ever have a real job? He goes on about the poor labor guy out there working hard in the mines, on the streets, and everything else. The guy never held a job in his life, other than being a politician.
Well, I'm not fully convinced, Jim, that Mark Carney is a man of the people either. To be completely honest with you, I don't think either of them should wear that badge.
Okay, we'll give it some time. Let's see what he has to say. But for the moment now, Canada is not broken. It never was broken. Carney's going to bring us forward, and I think Carney is the best qualified person to take on that. Below the 49th parallel.
Okay, buddy. Thanks for the call.
Take care.
Take care. 902-405-6000. John, my barber. How are you, John?
Just trying to make everyone's hair great again. I'll get everyone wound up. I'm joking. Just had to.
There you go.
Get that out
if you make mine great again, bud, then then you'd be walking on water.
Yeah, really. Anyway, just this whole Poilievre thing. Like your last caller there, Jim. I think he needs to put his cop hat back on and maybe look at some actual evidence. Like everyone's like, oh, Poilievre's like Trump of the North and that. For one, his wife's a refugee of color. His adopted father is gay. Not that it should even matter, but people don't know these things. And what an ingenious strategy by the Liberals to shut down Parliament right before the leadership race so Poilievre can't get his message or anything out. And CBC just got funded like another $1 billion.
No, they didn't get, John, they did not get funded.
That put through.
No, the Heritage Minister says that that's what she would like to see. But that is not that is not done, and like that'll take the next act of Parliament to do that.
Okay, I was just watching a thing with Michelle Ferrari, the Conservative MP, before I called you. There was another update on that. But
yeah.
Okay, but anyway, no, like I don't get why they're always like comparing him to Trump of the North and all this. And the other thing is too, like people can agree to disagree with me, but he's defunding the mainstream media when it's done. So there's always like when do you ever hear anything on the mainstream media, CTV or CTV, anything positive about Poilievre? It's always about the Liberal leadership, or there's always a slant on things.
I don't know if that's completely fair, John. I mean, I think that I try and strike a balance. Some would say that I don't do a good enough job.
You're balanced. I'm not saying that because you're my friend, but you're as balanced as you can be. But these other news networks, no.
Yeah, well, okay. Anyway, John, listen, thanks for the call, pal.
I'll see you soon.
Okay, see you later. Take care. 902-405-6000. Let's see where we're going next. Donna. Hello, Donna.
Oh, hi. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
First of all, I think we should all say a little prayer for this child that was stabbed. I know if I just cut my finger with a knife or something, I'm in pain. And this poor little thing, I guess I don't know, the little kid has multiple stab wounds.
Yep.
And it's going to be terrible for the child and terrible for the parents. I can't imagine what they're going through.
Yep.
Anyway, as far as Mark Kearney goes, I'm not for him, obviously. I've said that many times. And there was a report that I read. Now, I don't know if this is true or not, because there's so much stuff out there that's fake news. He was at a meeting a few years ago with some big government leaders, whatever, and I don't know if it's the WEF or whatever, but he was saying that by the turn of the century, he would like for Canada to have a population of 100 million. Mm-hmm. Now, I've read that in a couple different articles. We don't have room in Canada for another 500 people to come in. And Trudeau's bringing in, he said the other day, on TV, 4,700 from, to start with, from Somalia or Sudan, one of those places. We don't have any room for anybody. I don't know where. We've got thousands living out in the streets, and people can't find apartments. Anyway, and my last thing that I'll say, I love listening to Gloria. I think she's amazing, and she's a very smart lady. And I don't know. It's everything that's being said about Pierre. I disagree with a lot. He's not at all like Trump. I don't know where people are getting that from. And I hope he gets in as Prime Minister. That's all I'll say.
Okay, all right. Thanks for the call. We appreciate it. Thanks for the calls, everybody. We will open the phone lines again tomorrow between 11 and 12. Nova Scotia doctors warn of health risks from fracking and uranium mining. That when we come back.
Thanks.
The Nova Scotia Committee on the Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment, the acronym is CAPE, is raising urgent concerns with the provincial government's plans to repeal legislation protecting Nova Scotians from the development of hydraulic fracturing, known as fracking, of course, and uranium mining. In response to Premier Houston's recent announcements, CAPE Nova Scotia warns that these activities pose significant and long-lasting threats to public health and the environment. Joining us to discuss all of this is Dr. Laurette Geldenhuys, is CAPE's Nova Scotia's chair and spokesperson. Doctor, thanks for joining the show.
Hello, thank you for inviting me.
All right, in your release you say that the medical evidence is clear and growing that these activities are associated with serious health risks that our communities cannot afford to hear. Where is the evidence, and how do we know that it's clear and growing?
There are countless medical studies, and I can name a few as examples. So starting with uranium mining, according to the Environmental Protection Agency of the United States, radon gas is the second leading cause of lung cancer after smoking, and radon gas is what is released when uranium mining occurs. There are also other concerns related to uranium mining, such as an increased risk to develop bone cancer, and the immune system, the heart, the kidney, and the reproductive system are also affected. There is a big study that was published by the Occupational Cancer Research Centre of Cancer Care Ontario in February 2015, the Ontario Uranium Miners Cohort Study. And this study followed over 28,000 male uranium miners in Ontario. And the study showed that compared to Canadian males, there was an increased incidence of and numbers of deaths due to lung cancer and silicosis. The study also demonstrated a dose-response relationship, meaning that the higher the dose was and the longer the period of exposure was, the higher the likelihood of developing cancer. And the study particularly points out that the low doses experienced by these Ontario miners, due to better ventilation, are similar to the levels of exposure experienced by uranium miners today. I can also mention some studies related to fracking. So the process of fracking involves injection of toxic compounds into the earth, and these end up in the air and the water, affecting people in the proximity of these activities. And there was a big review study published by Drs. Margaret McGregor, a family physician at UBC, and Tim Tuccaro, a public health physician from Simon Fraser University, and others, in the Canadian Journal of Public Health, and very recently, June 2024. And they looked at 52 studies from 9 jurisdictions, only 2 of which were set in Canada. And these studies showed an increased risk of developing asthma, other respiratory diseases, cardiovascular disease, most concerning and alarming childhood acute lymphocytic leukemia, and in general, an overall increase in death. And what is particularly concerning is that these studies show that rural and Indigenous communities are more at risk than the general population.
Okay, so do you feel as though that the government of the day has this information or knows this information or disputes it? Have they do they dispute this info?
When we submitted our letter to the Premier, we expressed a willingness to have a conversation with him about this, but we've received no response. We are very concerned that the government is unaware of this information, and there is a tendency to take into account information provided by industry rather than by healthcare professionals who truly know the health risks to the population of Nova Scotia of these activities.
All right, the Premier mentioned special interest groups, or I think that's the term that he used. Do you feel as though that you would be included in this as an interest group that always opposes any type of development?
So certainly, I don't know if he had us in mind, whether he had healthcare professionals in Nova Scotia in mind. But certainly, as far as special interest is concerned, we have an enormous interest in the health of Nova Scotians. So that is what we are advocating for. When we see activities that will negatively affect the health of Nova Scotians, we have to speak up because that is part of our duty as health advocates.
All right. If I were to go and look at other jurisdictions that have been mining uranium and fracking for decades and decades, what would I find when it comes to health records? Would there be anything that would contradict this, or would this be consistent empirical data time and time again?
This would indeed be the data that you would find time and time again. As I've mentioned, the publication from the Canadian Journal of Public Health that looked at 52 different studies from 9 jurisdictions, 2 of which were in Canada. This was published by physicians from BC, where unfortunately fracking is rampant, and many physicians are seeing very serious health effects. In fact, there are small communities where more than 50%, where fracking is occurring, where more than 50% of the physicians have left because they are concerned about the health of their families.
Okay, so what when you talk about this with your colleagues, is there solidarity? Is everybody on board with this, or are there some healthcare professionals that would contradict what you're saying here in Nova Scotia?
Certainly, since hearing this announcement, every single healthcare professional that I have spoken with. Granted, I've not spoken with all the physicians and all the healthcare professionals in Nova Scotia, but certainly every single one that I've spoken to is deeply concerned about this development. And the evidence is very clear. If one does a PubMed search, this is a search engine where you can look for scientific studies. There are hundreds and hundreds of studies about the health effects of radon gas and uranium mining. And I've not found a single study that has demonstrated that there is no health risk.
Okay, jurisdictions in the United States, Pennsylvania, other jurisdictions where they're fracking, similar findings?
Yes. So of the 52 studies that were used in the big review by the BC physicians, 2 were in Canada, but of the remaining ones, those included studies from the United States. As I've been reading up about this, particularly more since I am now concerned that the home province where I live and where my children and my grandchildren are living, that we are now under the same threat. I've been doing quite a bit of reading, and I have been reading of other jurisdictions, including United States jurisdictions, where these health effects have been found.
Okay, Doctor, I appreciate your time. Thank you for the chat.
Thank you for your interest in this extremely important topic.
All right, take care. Dr. Laurette Geldenhuys is with CAPE, Nova Scotia's chair and spokesperson. I saw this story this morning on the CBC website. Nova Scotia wants to deny vexatious information requests. Critics say they're concerned. That, and also another story which would develop last week, the Privacy Commissioner says the Nova Scotia government failed security obligation in MOVEit privacy breach. We'll chat about all of this when we come back. Trish Ralph is Nova Scotia's Information and Privacy Commissioner. Commissioner, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me, Todd.
All right, so a couple of things I want to get to. I want to talk to you about the MOVEit privacy breach. But first, I saw this story this morning on the CBC website, and I thought I'd get your take on it. The headline, Nova Scotia wants to deny vexatious information requests. Critics say they're concerned. Province introduced changes to the Freedom of the Information and Privacy Act in a surprise bill. Can you let everybody know a little bit more about this, please?
Sure, yeah. So it was a surprise to us as well. We were not consulted on this bill. So we've been looking at it all week, or all of last week, trying to digest it and figure out the implications. And so we're going to do a submission for the Law Amendments Committee on this. We're still in the middle of our comments, so I don't want to get too deep into our thoughts at it, but our thoughts at this time. But we're going to focus on 3 elements, and those are that there's some inconsistencies and gaps between what they're proposing now and the existing laws and regulations, so it's going to be hard to figure out how those will work together. The second is that there's an expanded burden on applicants to identify the particulars of what they're asking for, and that it gives us a little pause. And then the third one is the frivolous and vexatious. And these provisions are largely inconsistent with most laws across the country because they require most other jurisdictions require permission of the commissioner to do that. And this act is silent, or this bill is silent on that. So we're still working hard on it. We're going to, once it's finalized, we'll put it on our website, and we'll, of course, provide it to Law Amendments Committee. But right now, we're still sort of in the midst of digesting all the implications of what's in that bill. And ultimately, who determines what's vexatious? Under this bill, it would be the public body, the person who the applicant asks the records from, and then they can essentially appeal that decision up to my office. All right. So, yeah. So they're more. I guess it's subjective in some ways. It's not as though that there's a. It's not like it's math. I guess is where there's a formula where you can say this is vexatious and this qualifies because. In many cases, it's objective, is it not? Yeah, so this is part of the problem with what's going on is we haven't had a chance to fully digest that. Like there would be cases in other jurisdictions that we could look at. This is not, the frivolous and vexatious language is not new to, like it's in a lot of jurisdictions. It's actually something we've asked for. Mm-hmm. It's just the nuance of the language and the implications of what could happen with this different wording, because it looks to be quite different in other jurisdictions and we don't know that yet. So we want to have a lot of time to look into that, or spend a lot of time looking into it before we submit our submission. All right. Under the current rules of the current law, is there room for improvement, do you think, or were things just fine and no need for any type of tweaking or adjustment? No, we definitely think there's room for improvement. The bill hasn't been updated in 30 years, and so for the first time, I think it was last year, there was a commitment to do a fulsome review of the legislation. So this is outside of that, is my understanding. But generally, yes, our legislation desperately needs to be updated in many, many ways. All right, but consultation, generally, would that not be the approach to consult you or somebody from your office? Yeah, that's what we would have liked, and that is something we actually asked for in our legislative review, that there be a mandatory requirement to consult with our office. But it's historically the case that we don't get consulted, and that's disappointing, right? We have a lot to offer. We have a lot to contribute, and a lot of experience, and so when we're not consulted, that's challenging. Well, I just find it interesting that when people are in opposition, then they will be the champion for your office. And when they have the opportunity to be in government with a 2/3 supermajority, suddenly you're not even worthy of a phone call or a heads up. It's kind of pathetic, actually, in my opinion. Yeah. That's why we're asking for the consultation provisions in the legislation. We just want to make sure that it's a requirement going forward. All right. So ultimately, if the government just says, "Nah, too bad," they can push this through, can they not? Yes. Yes, they can. So that's all their process, and that's questions for them, I suppose. Yeah. But yeah, they can do that. So ultimately, it would lead to less transparency and less ability for people to get information. Ultimately, is what the end result of this would be. Safe to say? Well, I think that. Is that safe to say that ultimately this is going to result in less transparency? I don't know if I'm ready to say that quite yet. I think there's some nuances and some issues that need to be ironed out, and we want to be really clear on that before we want to be clear on that before we speak publicly and before we finalize our submission to law amendments. Well, again, but being railroaded by this without even being consulted is not a good start. I think you would be safe in saying that. Yeah, we would have liked to be consulted for sure. Yeah. And this is, it's, that's why it's not, super uncommon, I suppose. But that's why we want that provision in the bill, so it's not a choice and it's not going to happen in the future in their global review that they're doing of the legislation. So we're really hoping that recommendation that we've made gets picked up. Hopefully, when there's a bill that addresses all of the provisions that we've been speaking about in their global legislative review, I'll call it. This is sort of coming outside of that.
Right. Okay. All right. Also, the commissioner, you calling for better safeguards following the 2023 MOVEit data breach. For what, by way of background, give everybody a bit of a background on this whole thing, please.
Sure. So in 2023, the Nova Scotia government and a few of its agencies use this file transfer system called MOVEit. So what it is a system. So say you have to move a big volume of information from one person to another. This is like the transfer system that you can do that on. And so what happened was, a group conducted a cyber attack on that system. It impacted people all over the world, but Nova Scotia also used this transfer service, so it impacted us too. And what happened was they went in there and stole a bunch of information. And when we talk about not having sufficient security systems in place, what happened was the system is supposed to be used kind of like a highway, Todd, so it should go from one jurisdiction or one person to another, and then it should be taken off that highway. But in many cases, what happened was they didn't have proper disposition schedules, so they left that information on there like a parking lot. And so all kinds of information was sitting there, and when we call them threat actors, stole the information, they were able to get that information too. And our perspective was, well, if that information hadn't been sitting there in that parking lot, as it should not have been, then that information wouldn't have been able to be taken by the threat actors. Okay. So we recommended that they needed to get to do some better security practices in place for future.
Okay, and are you confident that steps are being taken to improve this?
Well, the one good thing that I will say is, so we call it, this is sort of technical, but we have this tool that we call a privacy impact assessment. And so what it is basically when you're going to do a new project or implement a new system that could have privacy implications, you sort of do a review of it and you think, oh, what could possibly go wrong here? And let's try and preempt a lot of this stuff. And you might find things that you can't even do right at that stage. Mm-hmm. And so they didn't do one of those. And that was another big issue that we had when we did our investigation. It's a pretty basic thing to do, and they didn't do it. And so we recommended that they do that in this case, and they have given us indication that they are going to do that and go back and retroactively do that for the system. We'll see whether they do, but they've indicated to us that they plan to, yes.
And it kind of makes you wonder what else is going on out there, what other gaps are out there right now, and what other vulnerabilities are out there right now. Because if it happened with MOVEit, then it could happen, I'm sure, with other companies and other systems that we're operating under.
Mm-hmm. So actually, if we pull it back to where we started with the global legislative review that they're in the midst of conducting, that's another thing we've recommended. We recommended those privacy impact assessments be mandatory. And they're really the best tool that we have, all of us, collectively to address and try and prevent some of these things. And for example, this privacy impact assessment, had they done it, it would have been a pretty basic thing to say, okay, they don't have records scheduled here. They don't have a schedule for when they're going to not use it as a highway or when they're planning on using it as a parking lot, I guess. And so that absolutely would have been something that a privacy impact assessment would have looked into. So yeah, we want it to be mandatory so that that would also hopefully cut down on this kind of stuff.
Commissioner Ralph, I appreciate your time. I know you're very busy. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you. Have a nice day.
All right, take care. Trish Ralph, Nova Scotia's Information and Privacy Commissioner. Small business carbon rebate will be taxed for now despite government promises. We'll chat with Dan Kelly when we come back. All right, joining me for a chat is Dan Kelly, Canadian Federation of Independent Business President and CEO. Dan, thanks for joining the show.
Anytime.
All right, so lots and lots to talk about, but first let's start with this. The federal government has confirmed that small businesses will have to pay tax on their carbon rebate, despite government promising otherwise, because Parliament can't currently pass legislation to make the payment exempt from income taxes. I don't know anybody who would think of anything other than this being ridiculous, but it's just unbelievable. Truly, it is.
Oh, good Lord! This carbon tax issue has been one of the most bizarre, with so many twists and turns over the 5 years that the federal carbon tax has been in place. And of course, Atlantic Canadians joined the fun about a year and a half ago. Businesses pay, small businesses pay the carbon tax just like consumers. The federal government, when they put this in place, promised that 10% of the total revenue would be set aside and paid out to small firms, just like the 90% that was paid out in quarterly checks to consumers. But then they sat on the money for 5 years because they couldn't figure out a formula to get it back to businesses in the first place. So 5 years in the provinces that have had it that long, this money's been building. $2.5 billion now was accumulated. And finally, last year, we pleaded to Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland to get the money out because businesses need it. She agreed in the budget. We worked with her on a formula. Checks went out finally in December after 5 years, a year and a half wait in Atlantic Canada. And this was interesting money. We assumed it was, just like the consumer rebates, tax-free. Then the CRA told us privately, well, wait a minute, the way the government constructed this isn't tax-free. We tried to get the minister to overturn that decision, and then finally we ended up, out of frustration, going public with this in November. Minister Freeland then sent out the message that she would overturn this decision, the plan of the CRA, and make it tax-free. Then she quits, then Parliament's prorogued, and then we find out that nothing has happened, and in fact it is still taxable. It's so incredibly frustrating. One of the most frustrating pieces of public policy in my 30 years at CFIB.
Right, what type of dollars are we talking here? Not huge dollars, but still dollars nonetheless?
Yeah. $2.5 billion went out to businesses, on average about $4,000 to each business in Canada. So that's not small change.
Yeah.
In Atlantic Canada, that money has been building. I think in some provinces it was about $1,200 for just a year in the carbon tax fund. That money was distributed in December by, if you can believe it, the other twist in this was that they sent it out by check during the postal strike.
Wow.
The money sat there. But businesses finally have it. They're filing corporations file tax returns throughout the entire year. It's not all on one day, just like Canadians have a deadline. Mm-hmm. And so some businesses have been filing this with the assumption that the Department of Finance said that it is tax-free, and that still is on the government's website. And then CRA confirms for us in writing that, in fact, this might be intended to be tax-free, but because Parliament is prorogued, government is powerless, and it will be taxable until such time as legislation is passed. So, yeah, I mean, maybe if the government gets around to it, businesses can then file retroactively to get their taxes back. But, I mean, come on, this is just nuts.
Unbelievable. Tax on tax, right?
Well, this is it. I mean, this is a tax rebate. So in my mind, this would be like you file your taxes, you pay too much, you send in your return before the deadline, you get a tax refund, and then the government imposes a tax on the tax refund that you've been owed. I mean, how many already the carbon tax is taxable because the GST-HST is applied on top of it. And this, of course, puts the fallacy to the test. I mean, if we needed another reason to dislike the carbon tax, it means that this is absolutely not revenue neutral, because the government will probably bring in, I don't know, $400 or $500 million in tax revenue on the rebate checks that went out to small businesses.
All right. So on the carbon tax, Mark Carney says that he'll remove the carbon tax, the consumer-facing carbon tax, and create some other form of carbon tax. I don't know. I can't follow the bouncing ball. I heard him try and describe what it is, the tax credits, and large corporations can sell some of those. And I just, honestly, my mind went to mush. It doesn't take much trying to figure this out. Does small business have any concern about Carney's plan for a carbon tax?
Well, sure. Look, the whole issue of the way that carbon is priced is a concern. It has been less controversial in Quebec, where they do have a cap and trade system. It is right now hard to divine exactly what Carney might do if he becomes prime minister. Of course, we're waiting on whatever all the Liberal leadership candidates put out on this, but. Yeah, I mean, look, the consumer carbon tax and the rebate scheme look like it'll go away. But is it going to be replaced by something that lowers costs overall for consumers? That's the big question, and we just don't have the answer to that at this moment. So it is very, very hard to figure out what this would mean to the bottom line, other than the mechanism that carbon is taxed right now would disappear.
Stand to reason, though, if there's a tax, somebody's going to pay it. It's going to make its way into the economy somehow. It's not magic, right?
Well, this is just it. It's like the tariff issue and anything else. If you impose a cost on business, yes, some businesses may eat those costs for a period of time, but ultimately they find their way back into consumer pricing. Any costs, this is why, those that are calling for higher corporate income taxes or anything else, I mean, it might feel good at that moment because Canadians actually don't seem to mind paying taxes. They just don't want to know about it. That's my takeaway from all of this. And I don't know. If we're serious though about improving affordability, we actually have to eliminate a few taxes, not just change them.
Does overtaxation, a jurisdiction being overtaxed, to truly run business and investment out of the country?
Oh, it absolutely does. So look, we're already hearing businesses that for a whole host of reasons, some prior to the tariff threat, that we're looking at relocation. But the more silent version of this is that businesses, especially those that have operations in more than one country now, that they do their expansions outside of Canada. So they may not even reduce their presence in our country, but the growth happens elsewhere. And that's a real shame because that's a missed opportunity for Canadian businesses. And I hear that so often from small and medium-sized companies that when they get into growth mode, they're not counting on that growth to happen in Canada. And it doesn't need to be this way. We absolutely could get them back. Actually, I was really encouraged by some of the recent Nova Scotia decisions, both on the interprovincial trade barriers and the small business corporate tax rate and the threshold. Some real progress from the Nova Scotia government on that. So I'm really happy to see that, and a lot of national leadership coming out of the Nova Scotia government right now on a bunch of fronts. I'm quite encouraged.
All right, what's the buzz? What's the skinny on the on March 4th? I do believe when this 25% tariff supposed to kick in. What's small business saying? What's the skinny on all this?
Yeah, about 2/3 of our members right now are saying that they will be directly or indirectly affected by this, and you have to keep in mind that exporting is not just a big business thing. I have about 16% of my membership that directly exports to the United States. These are all small and medium-sized companies. But 50%, I think it was 49% across the country, import directly from the United States. So the tariff threat is twofold. There is the tariffs that the U.S. would impose on Canadian goods, but then the retaliatory tariffs that we would impose on U.S. goods, that actually bites harder on small companies and ultimately consumers. And this is the part that we're really worried about. Look, I understand that the government of Canada has to retaliate in some way, otherwise we can't just roll over. At the same time, those domestic tariffs that we put in place are really going to be quite hard-hitting for small companies and will force many of them to try to, they may eat it for a bit, but if they go on for very long, they're going to have to be reflected in consumer prices, leading to inflationary pressures, and the saga goes on.
Dan, appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Anytime at all.
All right, take care. Dan Kelly, President of the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. U.S. Politics with Mark Brewer when we come back. All right, joining us for a chat is Mark Brewer, University of Maine political science professor. Mark Brewer, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate it.
I'm happy to always do it.
Listen, I've got an assignment for you. Are you ready for it?
Sure.
Okay. Send me what you did last week. I want a detailed schedule.
Oh my goodness, I know. I was thinking this weekend about what my email response would look like. I would take me enough time to do it that I wouldn't be able to get anything else done.
Oh my! What is going on here? Can you please tell me what's happening?
Unfortunately, I can't tell you what's happening. We've never really seen anything like this before in the American bureaucracy at any level. What I do think is interesting about the email that you referenced, which apparently was sent out to all federal employees over the weekend, is that according to reports, we're actually seeing for a fair amount of pushback from some of the agency heads on this, including some agency heads who are very much Trump loyalists. So, I mean, it's too early to say this for sure, but maybe this is an indication that, Musk is finally running into some meaningful resistance. I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, for sure. I think that we would be foolish to believe that, or to think that there's not waste at the federal level. I know that here in our country there certainly is, and government, I think, is notorious for waste. But that said, I mean, there still has to be a due process, and you still have to be systematic in the way you go about it, and you still have to treat people in a professional manner and in a humane way. I mean, this is. I don't think the American public would have an issue with a government that was saying, look, we want to trim some fat. We want to find out where there's waste. We want to be transparent in doing so. We're going to do it in a way which is not unilateral, anything. I don't think the American public has an issue with finding cost savings. Am I safe to say that?
No, I think you're right about that. I mean, we've efforts or calls to reform the American bureaucracy to eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse are always political winners, and there have been plenty of those efforts announced by various administrations, even over just the last 30 years or so. The difficulty is that most of them have not been terribly well thought out, and as a result, haven't really produced much of anything. And so, if you're Elon Musk or a supporter of the Doge efforts, you'd point to that and say, okay, people have paid lip service to this over time, and they haven't really produced any results. We're going to be different. Well, okay, the first part of that criticism is accurate, but that being said, the first part of your comments are also true. There's a proper mechanism for this, and it certainly involves Congress, and it involves the ability of members of the bureaucracy to present evidence on their own behalf, and there's proper treatment of individuals, and there's labor laws, and there's union requirements, and Musk is ignoring all of that. Which it may have worked at some of his previous enterprises. Maybe it worked at Twitter. Maybe it didn't. It's hard to say. Government is not a business, and so I'm sure that plenty of Musk people would say, all right, that's a problem right there. We do need to treat government like a business, but the reality is government's not a business, and you can't really treat it like one.
All right, so how much overreach is Doge doing here, or is it perceived when it comes to the courts? What would the courts, or are there what do you anticipate from a court challenge with this?
Well, I mean, there's already dozens of court challenges that have been lodged, and I'm sure there's more to come on this. How those play out obviously remains to be seen. The courts take time, which is one of their disadvantages. And I think Musk knows that, and he's using that to his advantage. In terms of how much overreach, I don't think anybody knows for sure, right? I mean, the information we're getting is piecemeal, it's anecdotal. I don't think anybody, including probably Musk and his team, could tell you the full extent of what they have done at this point. But even based on what we know, it's a huge amount of damage that's been done to the bureaucracy's expertise and abilities to do its job. Now, we know that some people who've been let go have been asked to come back in some pretty critical areas. But even with that, I mean, the damage here is real, and we don't know all of it, but based on what we do know, it's significant. The longer it stays in place, the harder it's going to be to undo.
All right, what countermeasures are applicable here? I mean, Congress what can be done in order to fight this besides court challenges?
Well, I mean, Congress would be the most significant and probably quickest form of pushback, right? Because the Constitution gives Congress the power of appropriations, and if money has been appropriated, it's supposed to be spent. But Congress isn't standing up for that prerogative right now. I mean, now even if they did, there'd probably still be an element of court challenge, but there's also ways that Congress could stand up for itself out beyond the courts. They could make it clear to the administration to say, look, you're going to get nothing through here unless and until you cease and desist on this. Congress is unwilling to do that. So that, at least for right now, that mode of recourse is off the table. The courts, you've already mentioned, that's the place where we're seeing the most action right now. Federal employees who are represented by unions are another form of recourse. They too would have to make use of the courts. But maybe the place where we might look the most for the quickest, most effective pushback might be twofold. One of them might be the bureaucracy itself, right, and the leaders of those agencies. And we're seeing a little bit of that with the email over the weekend, right? Tell us the 5 things you did last week. If some Trump loyalists, like Kash Patel and Marco Rubio and those types start pushing back on Musk, then that's going to be a problem for Trump. And then just public opinion, right? I mean, public opinion is very much against Musk already. And I think as the scope of what Musk and his DOE team are doing becomes known, public opinion could very easily against these cuts. And Trump, if nothing else about Donald Trump, we know he's sensitive of public opinion, right? He monitors his approval ratings about as closely as anybody, and if that starts to work against him, I suspect that he might push for some changes.
And, of course, if the markets move as well and they're not responding, if the markets don't respond well to his policy, I'm sure that would be that would directly impact in a big-time way approval. Public hit somebody in the pocketbook, and you're going to find out how quickly they'll abandon you, right?
Oh, for sure, right? And we know that Trump monitors, stock market performance as well. He regularly touts it. If we know anything, Trump monitors his own approval ratings. He monitors the markets, and he monitors what's being said on news stations he approves of, such as Fox. So, I mean, those are the kind of places where you might start to see some outside feedback that might cause him to reconsider.
Okay, so when it comes to Ukraine and this whole situation without having Zelensky at the table, and is he partnering with Putin? Is this what's going on? Because the rest of the world sees it that way.
Read it any other way, right?
Yeah.
I mean, not only was Zelensky or no Ukrainians at the table, there were no Europeans at the table, right? I mean, this was a meeting in Saudi Arabia between Russians and us, and the phone call was directly Putin and Trump. So, I mean, it's hard to read it any other way. I mean, some high-level Trump administration officials are trying to portray it differently, and maybe behind the scenes doing something different, but hard to look at it any other way and other than described.
Yeah, it's just, and when you look at the obligation that the Americans had, and this is again, Trump is saying, well, we spent hundreds of billions of dollars and of course that number is contested. Then we want to broker a deal in which we get some of your natural resources. I mean, this is bizarre stuff, is it not?
It certainly is. I mean, I don't think that. I mean, we'd be naive to believe that concessions aren't made in exchange for support that's being given. I mean, that's a time-honored tradition, right? I mean, there's a reason why, for example, there's U.S. bases in various foreign countries around the world, right? But it's not made explicit in such a way that it resembles almost like an organized crime shakedown, right? Which is what this comes off as to a certain degree. It's almost never this explicit, and certainly not this unseemly.
No, for sure. And you just don't know what's going to happen next. And this is part of Trump's MO, though, is it not? Just keep people guessing, keep people on their toes, and you just never know what's next. That's part of his shtick, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely, and he sees that as a strength. And in the business world, it can be, right. And there's some instances in politics where it can be too. I do American domestic politics, right? So I'm going to go a little bit outside of my area of expertise here. But my relatively limited knowledge of foreign policy, instability there tends to be more problematic, right? I mean, foreign partners generally like to know where they stand, where you stand, where the relationship stands, and what they can count on you for. And, for I don't know, 75 plus years, that has been true of the Americans, at least, and its Western European and Atlantic, such as Canada allies. And right now, they're wondering if that's true anymore, which doesn't seem like it is.
Yeah. Okay. Mark, appreciate your insight as always. Thanks.
All right. Sounds good, Todd.
All right. We'll talk again. Mark Brewer, University of Maine political science professor. Strange times indeed. I'd like to thank Vanessa Vandeness on the other side of the glass. The control board is doing a fine job as always. Thanks for listening, everybody. We're back tomorrow at 10 o'clock. See you then.